The Department for Work and Pensions is currently facing a serious legal challenge, and this time, it's not being led by politicians, campaigners, or the media. This time, it's being led by pensioners themselves. Ordinary people who have worked for decades, paid into the system, and expected, quite reasonably, that they would receive the pension they were promised. Now, many of those very same people are being forced to fight back in court, simply to claim what should have been theirs by right. The case now drawing national attention could have massive implications for the way pensions are managed and distributed across the UK. Because we're not talking about a few late payments or temporary delays. We're talking about thousands of pensioners whose payments have been stopped, suspended, or frozen altogether, often without warning, explanation, or recourse. There was no letter, no phone call, no email, nothing. Just an empty bank account where their pension should have been. Some have gone weeks without any income at all, and many are still waiting for a resolution. In the meantime, rent goes unpaid, bills stack up, and food becomes a luxury. This isn't just about money, it's about dignity, security, and basic human rights. And in the face of all this, these pensioners have chosen not to suffer in silence. They're taking legal action. They're demanding accountability. And, most importantly, they're forcing the government to answer some very uncomfortable questions. Because here's what's really at stake. If the DWP's actions are upheld in court, it could set a legal precedent, one that allows the department to suspend or cancel anyone's pension payments at any time, for almost any reason, and with little to no explanation. Think about that. A faceless government department, armed with automated tools, could suddenly decide that you no longer qualify for your pension, and you wouldn't even be told why. No hearing, no process, just silence. That's why this case matters. It's not just about the pensioners currently affected. It's about the future of pension rights for everyone in the UK. And make no mistake, the DWP is defending its position. Their legal argument? That under certain circumstances, the department is within its rights to suspend payments if they believe a case needs to be reviewed. But pensioners and their lawyers are pushing back hard, arguing that these actions are not only unfair but unlawful. They say the DWP is violating principles. Financial stability, and that the department has failed to treat pensioners with the respect and transparency they deserve. So how did we get here? Well, it started with a few isolated reports, individual pensioners saying their payments had suddenly stopped. They were told it was just a glitch, or a routine review. But then, more and more people started coming forward. Soon, local news outlets began picking up the story. Then social media exploded. And suddenly, it wasn't just a handful of cases, it was a pattern. A widespread problem. And behind every one of those cases is a real person. Someone who worked, contributed, and depended on that pension to survive. One of the most disturbing elements of this whole situation is the role that automation seems to be playing. According to early reports, many of these payment suspensions were triggered not by a person, but by algorithms. Automated systems that scan for supposed irregularities or potential fraud. But here's the problem, these systems don't understand context. They don't know if someone missed a letter because they were in hospital. They don't care if a data mismatch is the result of a clerical error. They just flag the case, suspend the payment, and move on. And all too often, no one double-checks the decision. That's what we're dealing with, machines making life-altering decisions with no human oversight. And the consequences? They're devastating. People left without heat. Without food. Without the ability to pay for basic medication. And perhaps worst of all, left without answers. When they try to call, they're put on hold for hours. When they write letters, they get no response. And all the while, the bills keep coming. The stress, the anxiety, the sense of helplessness, it's crushing. And yet, the official response remains vague at best. DWP spokespeople say they're aware of some delays and that they're working to resolve them. But for pensioners living day to day, that's just not good enough. Now, MPs are starting to take notice. Some have raised the issue in Parliament, calling for transparency and reform. Behind the scenes, it's likely that the DWP is scrambling to contain the fallout. But public pressure is mounting. Legal teams are gathering evidence. And whistleblowers from within the department are beginning to speak out. They describe an internal culture of confusion and fear, staff under pressure to clear cases quickly, to meet targets, to avoid escalating complaints. In some cases, employees were told not to question the algorithm's decisions. That alone should raise red flags for anyone who cares about fair treatment and justice. Because here's the thing, a pension is not a gift from the government. It's not a handout. It's something people earned, through years of work, through national insurance contributions, through doing their part. To take that away without explanation is not only unjust. It could be illegal. That's why legal teams are also looking at whether this violates the right to peaceful enjoyment of one's possessions under human rights law. A pension is a possession. It belongs to the individual. The state has a duty to protect that right, not undermine it. The stories coming out of this are heartbreaking. One pensioner had to borrow money from their children just to buy groceries. Another ended up in hospital due to stress-related illness. Some have said they feel ashamed, like they've done something wrong. But they haven't. They're being failed by a system that was supposed to support them. And now, they're finally fighting back. And if they win, the DWP may be forced to change its policies, introduce safeguards, and compensate those who've been wronged. But even if the court rules in their favor, there's still a long road ahead. The legal process is slow. It involves thousands of pages of documentation, witness testimony, and competing interpretations of law. It also creates an opportunity to shine a light on how the system works, to hold institutions accountable, and to demand real reform. And that's where the public comes in. Because this case is not just for the pensioners currently affected, it's for every future retiree in the UK. If the DWP is allowed to operate without scrutiny, what's to stop them from doing this again? Or worse? So what can people do now? If you or someone you know has experienced an unexplained pension suspension, keep records. Bank statements, letters, call logs, emails, anything that shows what happened and when. These documents could prove vital if compensation claims are eventually allowed. But beyond that, speak out. Share your story. Write to your MP support advocacy groups. The more pressure we apply, the harder it becomes for the DWP to sweep this under the rug. Because at the end of the day, this is about people. Not spreadsheets. Not algorithms. People. People who worked hard, followed the rules, and trusted that the system would be there when they needed it. That trust has been broken. And it won't be restored by vague statements or empty promises. It will only be restored through justice, accountability, and meaningful change. The hope is that this legal challenge can be a turning point. That it will force those in power to rethink how they treat the most vulnerable. That it will remind government departments that their job is to serve the public, not to shield themselves behind bureaucracy. And maybe, just maybe, it will send a message that pensioners are not to be ignored. They have a voice. They have rights. And they will no longer accept being treated as afterthoughts. So to every pensioner currently affected, you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your fight is just. And you are standing not only for yourself but for millions of others, present and future, who depend on a system that must do better. This is not just a legal battle. It's a battle for fairness. For respect. And for the basic decency that every person deserves in retirement.